A gute Woche. Rabbi Zilgazunze began the Farbrengen this afternoon pertaining to the Kinus HaShluchim HaElami, the international Kinus of all Shluchim from all over the world, which is taking place here this weekend. The Rebbe brought out that every Yid is a Shliach from the Rebishter. And every Neshama that comes down into this world to fulfill its mission, the Neshama comes from Igra Rama Lebeira Amikta, from a very high mountain, and comes down into a very deep ditch, which this is, Olam Hazeh HaTachta, in this world, is the Bira Amikta, the deep ditch. And the reason for this mission for every neshama is so that this world is turned into a Dira Lo Yizbarech. This place is turned into a place of residence for the Rabbeinu Shlomo. And in order that the Shliach should be successful, so when the Shliach is nearby and close to the Mishaleach, to the one that has sent him, and we speaking close, a closeness which is not only a material closeness, not only a physical closeness, but when he's closely attached to the Mishaleach, that is when his Shlichus can be successful. However, when the Shliach is at a distance from the Mishaleach, then it is hard for him that it should be successful, especially when the Shlichus is not an easy one. However, being that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Beirei Olam Umanhigoi, the Rebishter is the one that has created the world, and he is the one that is constantly conducting the world. And the world is constantly being created, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Shara Yichud Ve'emunah. And being that this is a matter of Kedusha, and all inyanim of Kedusha, we constantly have to keep on escalating higher and higher. So the creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, constantly creating the world, is also in a format of Aliyah, and an Aliyah be'ein areich, Aliyah elevations that are no comparison to the previous levels. And being that the Rebishter is constantly with us, this is giving us the shlichus to be the source of strength to be able to fulfill this shlichus, this mission of turning this world into a suitable residence for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this also relates to this week's Sedra, which we find at the end of Parshas Toldos, and it also continues into Parshas Vayetze, which this is the Seder which we will begin reading today by Mincha. That at the end of Parshas Toldos, the Torah tells us that Yitzchak sent Yaakov that he should go to Haran. But in Parshas Toldos, the Seder only talks about Yitzchak sending Yaakov. Where do we find that Yaakov really fulfilled the mission that Yitzchak gave him, and he listened to him, and he went from Be'er Sheva and went to Haran? The Milui HaShlichus B'Poil, this we find in Parshas Vayetze, which Parshas Vayetze begins, Vayetze Yaakov me Be'er Sheva, Vayelech Haran. What is Be'er Sheva? Sheva is the Inyan of the 7 Midas. What is Be'er Sheva? The well for the 7 Midas. The source of the 7 Midas. In other words, Yaakov was at a level which is much higher than the source of the 7 Midas. Even higher than Seichel. And where did Yaakov go to? Yaakov went to Haran. And as the Pasuk does not say, Vayelech lecharan, but the Pasuk says, Charano. And as we know, Rashi tells us in Chumash, that in the general rules of Diktuk, wherever we can use a word, either with a lamed at the beginning of the word, or having a hey at the end of the word. However, here, if the pasuk would just say, "Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva, vayelech lecharan," that Yaakov went out from Beersheva and he went to Haran, this would mean that where was the continuation of Yaakov's trip, leaving Beersheva, and he went to Haran. However, when the pasuk is emphasizing vayelech Harana, this Hey is emphasizing that in Haran, what does Haran stand for? Haran stands for, as Rashi brings the name of Chazal, Charoin Af Shaloilom. Haran caused anger to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And here we say, where did Yaakov go? Yaakov went to Haran. No, such a low level, the lowest level of Haran. And that is where Yaakov went. The same thing is with the neshama of every Yid. Every Yid comes down, as the Gemara uses the expression we mentioned earlier, me'igra rama lebeira amikta. And as Chazal say, this is a tremendous yerida. Because the truth is, if the neshama would come only from me'igra rama to a plain piece of land, it would also be a yerida. But Chazal emphasized that not only is the neshama coming down to a plain land, but the neshama is coming down into a ditch. And what type of a ditch? Beira mikta. Which all of this is emphasizing the strength of how, to what extent this yerida is. As we find similar by Yosef. Which is a pasuk that led to Yosef's going down to Mitzrayim. Which this was actually the beginning of Golus Mitzrayim, which is the source of all Goliaths, including this one. So there the pasuk tells us that Yosef was put into a boyer, and the boyer was a boyer reik, it was an empty ditch, that there was no water in it. So Chazal interpret, what does it mean there was no water? Not only was there no water in it, but nechashim v'akrabim yeshba, it had snakes and damaging animals which were able to hurt Yosef. So the same when we're talking about the yerida of the neshama which is coming down into this world, so each and every Yid who comes down into this world to fulfill his shlichus, the neshama comes down, me'igra rama lebeira mikta. And as we find Taka by Yankov, what was the first incident that Yaakov encountered when he arrived in Lavan? He arrived in Charan, he met Lavan. And Lavan was Lavan Haramai. He was a not honest person, a dishonest person. And what did he do in his first encounter with Yankov? He right away fooled Yankov. Yankov, mitzad himself, is Titein Emes li Yankov. Yankov, mitzad himself, is the source of truth. And what did Yankov have to suffer when he came to Charan? In Charan, he had to suffer to meet a Lavan and suffer from Lavan's Ramois, from Lavan's dishonesty. As we find Taka Yaakov himself mentioned to Lavan. What did he tell him? So later, after being there a while, he told him that it's 20 years that I'm with you. He explained how he suffered from working all the 20 years with him, how he suffered from the cold and so forth. What did Yaakov want to bring out here? Yaakov is Pchir Shabbos, most chosen of the others. So what is Yaakov complaining? It was cold, it was hot. What difference did this make to Yaakov? But the explanation on this is, the Rebbe tells us in Tanya that the others were a merkava. Just like a wagon is bottled to the person who runs it. The same thing, the others, they were a merkava, that all of their inyonim were only to accomplish the Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, what did Yaakov complain about? Yaakov complained that the cold and the hot which he suffered while being by Lavan, this interfered with his avodah to fulfill the kavanah of one who served HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the level of a merkava. It was an interference with him. And this is what he's stressing, Esrim Shana. Esrim Shana is Chaf Shanim. Chaf relates to Sfiras HaKesach. And what did Yaakov complain? Yaakov complained that Sfiras HaKesach is down in Charan. And it's interfering with his Avodas Hashem. However, this was the Kavanah Elyoina. This is what the Rebbeinu wanted. The Rebbeinu wanted that in Charan, no, as the pasuk says, Yaakov should go there, and Yaakov should be Mevarer Lakus there, and that will lead to the Tachlis Hashlemis, to the highest and complete level. Then that will reveal the real Keser in Avodas Hashem. And actually, this began right away at the beginning of Yaakov's life. So we read in this week's Sedra that when Rivka was pregnant to Yaakov and Esav, and she gave birth to them, so the pasuk tells us that when Yaakov was born, Yodai Oichezes Ba'akev Esav, and that is why Yitzchak named him Yaakov. So the question arises, we're talking about the Shem Hanikoloi Beloshna Kodesh, which is given to Yaakov. So we say that Yaakov should be given a name that relates to Yaakov Shayches to Esav. How can we say a thing like that? However, on the contrary, here we find, because the pasuk stresses, why was he named Yaakov? Because Yodo Yoichezes Ba'akev Esav. He's given this name because his hand, he came out in a way holding on to the heel of Esav. So the question that the Rebbe is asking, we're giving a name. So the Rebbe says, the whole union of a name is the source of Chayes, the Shem HaNikoloi Beloshna Kodesh. So the Shem HaNikoloi Beloshna Kodesh, which is given to Yaakov, should be such which relates to Yaakov's relationship with Esav. But the answer is on the contrary. This is entire Aveda of Yaakov. And this was expressed right away as soon as Yaakov was born. As the pasuk says, Yodo Yoichezes Ba'akev Esav. What's the meaning of an achiza? He was holding on to Esav. What's the pshat when you hold on to something? When you hold on to something, that means you have a shaykhs to the thing. And this is what the whole inyan of Yaakov is. Yaakov's whole inyan is to be mevarer, to purify the Esav. And that is why we find later that Yaakov said that he's wanted to come to Esav. So Chassidus explains. Question arises, how come that Yaakov agreed to stop his Avodah and he will go and he will join Yaakov in Seir? Chassidus explains, Yaakov at that time was at such a level that he felt that the entire Avodah was already completed. And all that's left for him to do is the shleimus of the birur, to come and to join in together with Esav. And the same is in the shlichus that each and every Yid has. Here says the Rebbe, we're already that long in Golus. We're 1900 years in Golus. Yidden are screaming and complaining ad Mosai. There was never such a Golus which was so hard, Sayin Kamos and Sayin Eichos. So long and so hard. It's the longest Golus of all Golus. It's already over 1900 years. And it's the hardest of all Golus. And just like by Golus Mitzrayim, the Rebbe wanted that Yidden should stay longer in Golus, so that the Yidden come out with the Rechush Gadol. Yidden should come out very wealthy, so that Avram Avinu should not have any tiniest HaKadosh Baruch, as we all know the famous Chazal. So the same thing, it is in this Golus that the Rebbe is holding Yidden in Golus. However, when Golus will end, Yidden will come out with a tremendous amount of wealth, such a wealth which will be in no comparison to the wealth that the Yidden came out of when they left Mitzrayim. However, just like we find by Yitzias Mitzrayim, the Yidden were ready to give up on the wealth as long as the Rebbe should make an end to the Golus and the Rebbe should take them out of Mitzrayim. The same thing now, it's already so long that we're in Golus. And it's such a long Golus that we're begging that the Rebbe should take us out of Golus. Though that we are in a country which is a Malchus Shel Chesed, a government of kindness, and we can observe Torah mitzvahs, and not only can we observe Torah mitzvahs, but we are being helped to observe Torah mitzvahs. But nonetheless, it's still a Golus, and we want to go out of this Golus. And as we saw something very significant in this past year, that in Russia, which originally Russia was a country, that is the country that led to the arrest of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and later it was not only an arrest, but they sent him off into Golus, into Kostrama, and it is known what the Chinuch writes, that being in Golus is worse than death, Rachmana litzlan. And now it came to a point that that same country is letting people and Yidden leave the country, whether they want to the United States, or whether they want to Eretz Yisrael, and they're helping them with their funds. And when they say it's funds of a government, how does a government have funds? It's taxes money. So that means that it's something that's done with the participation of all the Bnei Amdina, all the people of the country. And this is also, that government took an interest in helping those people that got hurt in Chernobyl. And now the Russian government took an interest in helping them through doctors that should cure them, and cure them in what type of a way, as it's known that there is an Indian, generally refuah is only something which can help from here and after. The Rebishter's refuah can help in such a way that that there's no machla to begin with. However, normal medicine helps only to cure for the future, for the present and for the future. However, today in medicine there's also an Indian which can help on the past. And this is the type of medication which is being given to these children, and these children were let out of the country. And Ba'ashgoche Pchotis, where did these children arrive? They arrived to Kfar Chabad. And that is where they are now being kept, and that is where they are getting the chinuch now, and they're also getting all types of treatments and refuahs which they need. They're all getting it there. And even those parents that are arriving in Eretz Yisrael, the parents of these children, and want to take the children with them, so hopefully this will not happen. And even those that will be successful in taking their children with them, we hope that ultimately the children will return to the place where they originally belong, and that is Kfar Chabad. When we're talking about a kfar, a village, this concept relates to the Kolos Inyan of Geula. Because it is known, the Kolos Inyan HaGolos, pardon me. Kolos Inyan HaGolos has a shaykhs to a village. Because as it's brought out, what is the difference between the Nevuah, the prophecy that Yeshaya said, and the prophecy that Yecheskel said? The prophecy that Yeshaya said it very brief. He spoke about the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Chazal say he's like a person from a big city. However, the Nevuah of Yecheskel is like the prophecy is compared to a person that comes from a village. And that's why he had to explain everything in a very detailed and long way and so forth. And also, the Nevuah of Yecheskel was where? In Chutz La'aretz. As the Pasuk said, that he stood by the river of Kvar. And obviously, if he stood near that river, the water of Chutz La'aretz had to have an effect on him. Just like we find that the foods that a person eats has an effect on him. So obviously, the waters that are around the person also have an effect on him. And this inyan of Kvar, this is a tremendous hell of Vehesta. Tremendous cover-up on spreading of godliness. Kvar, Kof Beis Reish. And that is, and with this we can understand that they're Yidden, Chassidische Yidden, that when they're told a new explanation on an Inyan Chassidus, what is their reaction? This we heard already. There's nothing new in this. So therefore, what does this lead to? It leads that nobody gets nispal from it, and it cools people down. So they're actually cooling people down from hearing the new Inyan of Timis HaTorah by them proclaiming, we heard this already. But ultimately what happens, from this level of Yecheskel ben Buzi Meloshin Bezoyer, in a derogative way, what we ultimately will reach will be to the positive Inyan of Buzi Meloshin Boiz Yavuzuloi Meloshin grabbing, that it will come a time that we will grab all Inyanim of Torah mitzvahs. And this is also what the Inyan is of Yecheskel. Yecheskel is Meloshin Choizek, strength. And together with it, he has the name of Kael, the Rebishter's name, which this is one of the 7 names which cannot be erased. This also, the Rebbe continued that it's dafka in recent years that there was a tremendous revelation of Inyanim Chassidus, which previously we did not have all these Inyanim. Tremendous treasures are being printed. And these are Inyanim which previously only individual people had access to all this. And now, in recent years, all of this is printed, and Svarim of the Tzemach Tzedek and other Inyanim Chassidus, and all of this should be utilized in the proper way to learn in all this. And as the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, the great Inyanim that are accomplished when a Yid learns Torah. And as it is known, the famous mashal which the Alter Rebbe gave to Pinchas of Koretz. Pinchas of Koretz once found a sheet of Chassidus that fell down to the floor. Fell down. So he was very disturbed. Look what's happening. Yenim of Chassidus. It's like, to him, he looked at it, that he felt that Chassidus was something which not everybody was supposed to have a shaykhs to. And when he saw already a page of Chassidus on the floor, this was an indication, look how far Chassidus is spreading. So there's the famous mashal which the Alter Rebbe gave him about the Even Yokar, the most precious stone which is in the king's crown, the most precious jewel. That king's son once wasn't feeling well, and the king invited the best doctors. Nobody was able to find a cure for him, until there was one doctor that said that he has a cure, but what we have to do is take the most precious jewel that is in the king's crown and crush that and turn that into a medication that will help the Ben Melech, the prince. And naturally the king wasn't ready to do it. However, when his situation became yet worse, he turned to that same doctor again. The doctor told him, now I cannot guarantee you that it will help. But now the king was willing to do it. And he was willing to take the most precious stone, most precious jewel in his crown, and crush this. Perhaps one drop of it will come into the prince and will help him and have a positive effect on him. And the same thing is regarding the Indian of spreading Pnimi Satayra. Pnimi Satayra, that it should reach to every Yid. This is Bechlal, the Indian of the Shluchim. These days is the convention of the Shluchim, the Kinus of the Shluchim. This is the whole idea of Temchet Mimim, that the Chinuch and Temchet Mimim was such that Nigla and Chassidus are learned in the same yeshiva. And what it's meant by it is that when somebody learns Nigla, it should be noticeable that he has a shaykhus to Chassidus. As the Rebbe Rashab explained it, and it was later introduced by his son, who was the Menal Peil, the Friedrich Rebbe was the Menal Peil of Temchet Mimim. And this will lead, as mentioned earlier, Boiz Yavuzuloi, that everything will be grabbed. And we will come to the ultimate Gilui of the Leviyasan and the Sheirabah. First we will have the Leviyasan in the spiritual sense, and then we will have it in the physical sense. What does it mean, the spiritual sense? Says the Rebbe, the Leviyasan is a fish. Just like a fish is covered with water. The same way, Yidden will be surrounded and covered with Chassidus, which is Pnimi Satayra, which is what the Rambam writes at the very, very end of his Sefer, that Umola Oretz Deis Hashem, Kamayim Layom Mechasim, and as the Rebbe referred to it here, the Rebbe spoke a few weeks ago, that the Rambam talks about the Giluyim, which will happen when Mashiach will come. The Rambam talks about it in Hilchos Shuvah, and the Rambam talks about it here at the very end of his Sefer. When the Rambam talks about it in Hilchos Shuvah, he only brings the first half of the pasuk, Umola Oretz Deis Hashem. He does not bring the words of Kamayim Layom Mechasim. However, when the Rambam talks about it here in Hilchos Mashiach, the Rambam brings the pasuk in its entirety, Kamayim Layom Mechasim, and as the Rebbe brought out in detail a few weeks ago, that means the highest level of revelation of Getlichkeit, that Getlichkeit will be surrounding this world, Kamayim Layom Mechasim. This will lead to the ultimate Gula, where we will have the Leviyasan and the Sheirabah in the physical sense as well. And from this we come to Vayeshev Yaakov. That where was Yaakov? Yaakov was in Charan, and it was Dafke in Charan where he put up his entire Beis Yisrael, his entire family, including Shevet Levi. This is also what the Rambam writes regarding Shevet Levi, that Shevet Levi is not something which is the avoid of Shevet Levi, not only for those who are physically descendants of the tribe of Levi, but really each and every Yid, that Nodvor, Liboy, Veruchay, that has this volunteer in his spirit and in his heart to dedicate himself to the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, can be considered as part of Shevet Levi. This is all appropriate. What we're discussing this at this opportunity of the Kinus of Shluchim, that the Kinus of Shluchim that everybody here has gathered, and these Daled Amis, which is the Daled Amis of the Siddur Reinu, the Beis HaKnesses and Beis HaMedrash of the Siddur Reinu, and this bias. And as Chazal used the expression, Kol mi she'ein lo bayis einei adam, anybody that does not have a house is not considered a person. And what is the true house? There's another Chazal, ein bayis ela Torah. We're talking about a bayis, a house, such a house which is larger and bigger than the limitations of a person. He Ratzon, the Rebbe concluded that everybody should accomplish all these inyanim of Vayelach Harana, and the Vayelach Harana through the Avodah, through the accomplishments and achievements in Chorah, that should lead to the Geula Amitis V'Ashleima B'Poyel. Not just, like there's a famous episode that when the Likutei Torah was printed, Tzemach Tzedek said it's already an Inyan of Geula. So the Rebbe Marash's father told him, no, it's not enough. We need Geula B'Poyel. So let it be so that it should be Geula B'Poyel. Here it's also a proper place to mention there are those. There are Zayd, Yetzirah, and a Zayd and a Zupitzer, Yetzirah and a Zayd and a Kapata, and they claim that the Gemara says that we are prohibited to be deichek es haketz, to push for a time for the coming of Mashiach. So therefore they claim, how can we demand so for the coming of Mashiach? Says the Rebbe, they are in a tremendous error. The Ketz has already come. All the Ketzim, all the proper times for Mashiach to come have already passed. And therefore, all we are lacking the Geula B'Poyel. And therefore the Rebbe concluded everyone should fulfill their mission, their shlichus. Their shlichus amidst simcha v'tuv levov. And just like Yaakov put up in Choron Koil Beis Yisrael, including Yosef. Yosef is the Avodah of Yosef Hashem li bein acher, that from an acher to turn him into a bein l'Kadosh Baruch Hu. And not only that, but also Binyamin. The Rebbe mentions Binyamin is even a higher madrega than Yosef. Binyamin is the whole, as we find the whole thing by Binyamin, when Binyamin came to Yosef, and Yosef hid the becher into the package of Binyamin, the Gviyah Kesef. And ultimately we will get to Gviyah Kesef. When will we have the Gviyah Kesef? That we will have, it will come together with the Inyan HaGeula. And we will have the Inyan HaGeula, that we will all go to Eretz Yisrael and have the Beis HaMikdash taken from the Yad Mamish. The Rebbe continued that regarding the Inyan of Shlichus, it's brought out that there are several levels of Shlichus. And the Gemara uses the expression Shluchai Shalodam K'maisai. When one is fulfilling a mission for somebody else, he's one's emissary, he replaces him totally. However, Shlichus can be in a way that a person can be given a specific mission to fulfill. And for this mission, he's considered a Shliach of that particular person. However, there is a higher inyan in Shlichus, and that is when the entire essence of the Shliach becomes of the Mishaleach. That whatever the Shliach does, all the acts and all the maisim of the Shliach on all levels and on all phases are tied to the Mishaleach. This is the kinus hashluchim ha'ilami, the kinus of shluchim from all over the world, where we have that the shluchim, those that are at the highest level of shlichus, until those that are at the simplest level of shlichus, and all of them are uniting. All of them are uniting a total unity, a unity of ahavta l'reyacha kamecha, of all of them together. And primarily to explain and stress at the shlich, at the convention, what is uniting all of these shluchim. And the fact that's uniting all of these shluchim is that each and every one of them is a shliach of Melech, Malchei Amlochem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And each and every one of them was sent me'igra rama lebeira amikta. And as we say in davening every morning, nishama shenesata b'tahiroi. All the levels of the neshama, until we come to Olam Hazeh Agashmi, and this is where we have to come on to the shmir of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should guard our neshama, and that is why we say v'ato mishamra b'kirbi. And through this kinus, which is v'amech kulam tzadikim, all of Klal Yisrael are called tzadikim. The Gemara says a kinus of tzadikim, it is good, brings Hanoah Elohem and Hanoah Elo'olam. What does it mean, Hanoah Elo'olam? Olam Eloshin Helen v'Hester. The world that is a cover-up on godliness. However, it is through this kinus that it will remove this Helen v'Hester. And all shluchim will do their Aveda b'shleimus. And when a shliach does his Aveda b'shleimus, he puts his Esa koichas hanefesh, his 10 koichas hanefesh into his Aveda. Then shliach plus 10 equals Mashiach. Because we take out the lamet and we put in the mem, and mem replaces the lamet, and then it becomes Mashiach. And it leads to the Gila of Mashiach, which Mashiach actually is the Yechida HaKlolis of all of Klal Yisrael. And the truth is that each and every Yid has within him a spark of Mashiach. As it's explained on the Pasuk, Dorach Koichav Miyakov V'kam. So there are two interpretations of the Pasuk. There's one in the Yerushalmi that this refers to Mashiach. There's another interpretation of the Pasuk that it refers to every Yid. So it's brought out that we combine both of them. And all shluchim fulfill their mission. As mentioned earlier, each and every one of them with all their esa koiches hanefesh. And every shliach is capable of making another shliach. Shliach oise shliach. Up to 100 shluchim. And because this is a lashon which we find in the Rambam, shliach oise shliach ad meya. And the Rebbe is explaining why Meya, why 100, because Meya, as explained in last week's Farbrengen, as explained in Chassidus Bechlal, Meya relates to Shleimus. A whole and complete cycle is reflected in the number of 100. It says here it's also an opportune time to mention that a Sefer Hashlichus was published. But he's very surprised. This sefer was supposed to contain pictures of all shluchim with their families, and this sefer only has part of the shluchim. The rest of them are only mentioned. By name. Obviously, because those who are involved in it are so much carried away with the gullus that they forget on the iker, and bekocht sich, and they are involved in Tafel inside in Yonah. And what should be done is that as soon as possible, says the Rebbe, to prepare a book, a sefer, of all the shluchim. And this sefer should have the pictures of all the shluchim and their families. And this will also add in the unity of all the shluchim. And even little children should be in this sefer. Even a child, because when a child, even though now he's young, he sees his picture in the sefer. So he knows that he is a shliach b'koyach, incapable. In other words, he is also a potential shliach when he will learn more Torah and when he will grow up, and his parents will give him such a chinuch that he will also grow up to be a shliach. Zeh hakoten godli. Until we will all be merited and have the great shliach of Eliyahu Hanavi coming to us. And Eliyahu Hanavi will be mevaser the Geula. And each and every Yid will know about Mashiach. And every Yid will be able to serve as a shliach to notify other Yidden about the coming of Mashiach, until we will have the Gula Amitas Vashleim. Rabbi continued, it's the famous expression from the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe emphasized on behalf of the Alter Rebbe, am bedarf leben mit der Zeit, that we have to live with the time. And in which means Parshas HaShavua. And when we're talking about Parshas HaShavua, it's specifically the Parsha that has a shaychus to that day. And the Parsha that has a shaychus to Shabbos is not only the Parsha of Shvi, but it's also the Parsha of Shishi. Because on Erev Shabbos we prepare for Shabbos. And in the Parsha of Shishi it begins with V'yiten Lacha Elokim, the brachas that Yaakov gave. The brachas that Yaakov gave. That Yitzchak gave, pardon me. The brachas that Yitzchak gave to Yaakov begin with V'yiten Lacha Elokim. The question is, why does the pasuk use the expression V'yite? Should have been Yite. Doesn't come as a continuity to what was discussed earlier. What's discussed earlier is that Yitzchak sensed an odor of Gan Eden, and here he's from Yaakov, and here he's beginning to give Yaakov the brachas. So why does he begin with V'yite, with a vav? Rashi comments, Yitain v'yachzer v'yitain, that these brachas that are being given to Yaakov will be constantly repeated. What is the error which we can derive from this? The error which we derive from this is that when a shliach comes to a place, and a shliach obviously that comes to a place, he's coming there because either he was chosen to be a shliach, or he volunteered to be a shliach, and he's getting involved in matters which a shliach has to do there. So a shliach has to know that as soon as he's coming to a place, it's not just the first inyan, which is the first pu'ula, which he's going to do there, but he should right away know that there will have to be a repeat. Veitain. He will right away have to do other inyanim as well. He's not just coming to accomplish one inyan in his area of shlichus. There will have to be another inyan, veitain, until he will reach lamayla memdita v'hagbala, above any type of limitations. The Rebbe again mentioned about printing a sefer that will contain pictures of all the shluchim and their families. The Rebbe says it would be appropriate to make a decision about this at this kinus right now, and it should be done right away. And if it's a budget question, it's a question of funds, where to get the money for it, the Rebbe says the funds for it will be covered. Just to submit a budget, how much this will cost, and then it will be approved, and the sefer should be printed. We concluded the Farbrengen that those that have submitted mashke should come up and take it, should announce for what occasion this is, and as the Rashba writes, mitzvah lefarsem oiseh mitzvah, it's a mitzvah to publicize those people that do mitzvahs, and especially now that we are entering a special month, we are entering the month of Kislev, and today we are on the Shabbos Mevorchem of this month, and it's not a Shabbos Mevorchem where Rosh Chodesh is in the middle of the week, but from the Shabbos Mevorchem we are right away entering into Rosh Chodesh. And the specialty is that Rosh Chodesh, it is one day of Rosh Chodesh. Because when we have 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, obviously the second day of Rosh Chodesh is the main day. Why? Because that is when we begin to count the new month. But when we have 1 day of Rosh Chodesh, this is the main day of Rosh Chodesh, because right away on this day we are beginning to count the new month. So being that this year Cheshvan was a Chasar, and today is Shabbos Mevorchem Cheshvan, and it's Mocha Chodesh, and tomorrow is the 1 day of Rosh Chodesh, but it's only 1 day this time. So here we are entering this special month of Kislev, and it's a very special month. It's a month, special days in it, beginning from Yud Kislev, and then we have Chanukah. And this Rosh Chodesh Kislev is on a Sunday. Sunday is also a very special day. Sunday is the day, because in the Sheshes Yemei Abriya, when the Rebishter created the world, Sunday, why is it? It's a day that the Rebishter was Yochid Ba'ilamai. The Rebishter was in this world without anyone else in this world. So we should prepare for all these special days in this month, and the preparation in this month, and the preparation should begin right away from the Shabbos. A gute Woche and a freilichen Rosh Chodesh Kislev.